Disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. Tonight here, investigators on a possible break in this case, that male DNA found on a glove. And Savannah Guthrie, the pain evident on her face, with a new post to the person who took her mother, as they now begin week 3 without their mother.
She's 84 years old. She can't walk 50 yards on her own. She depends on daily medication just to function. And according to investigators, she was taken from her own home in the middle of the night without a single neighbor hearing a sound. No screaming, no struggle, no broken window, just silence. And then she was gone. What law enforcement found inside Nancy Guthrie's Tucson home didn't just open a kidnapping investigation. It triggered federal involvement within hours, 2 separate search warrants, a nationwide DNA manhunt, and a direct threat from the President of the United States. The evidence is real, the details are chilling, and the question that investigators still can't fully answer is the one keeping her family up at night. Who planned this, and why? The night that looked completely normal. On the evening of January 31st, 2026, Nancy Guthrie did what she often did on a Saturday. She was driven by her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, to her daughter Annie's house in Tucson. Dinner, games, family time, nothing unusual, nothing tense, just a regular night with people she loved. At 9:48 in the evening, Tommaso dropped her back at her home. Investigators confirmed the timestamp precisely because her garage door opened at 9:48 and closed exactly 2 minutes later. She made it inside. The house accepted her. And then the night went quiet. What happened over the next 4 hours is what investigators are still piecing together. At 1:47 in the morning, her doorbell camera disconnected. Not because the battery died, not because of a power outage. The camera itself was later found to be tampered with. Surveillance video recovered by the FBI shows an armed, masked individual walking up to Nancy's front door and physically attempting to block the camera, first covering the lens with a gloved hand, then ripping a plant from the yard to obstruct it. This person knew the camera was there. They had planned for it. At 2:12 in the morning, motion detection software registered activity on the property. At 2:28 in the morning, the app connected to her pacemaker showed a disconnect from her phone. Her pacemaker stopped syncing. Either the phone was moved away from her body, or she was moved away from her phone. By morning, she hadn't shown up to watch virtual church services with a friend. That's how the alarm was raised. Not because of a distress call, not because a neighbor heard something, but because an 84-year-old woman missed her Sunday routine. When family members checked on her and couldn't reach her, they called it in. By noon on February 1st, Nancy Guthrie was officially reported missing. Within hours, the Pima County Sheriff's Department was treating the home not as a missing person scene, but as a crime scene. And they called in the FBI. What investigators found inside that house when they arrived changed everything about how this case would be handled. What the FBI actually found inside the home. When Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos and his deputies first entered Nancy Guthrie's home, they spent nearly 20 hours processing the scene. 20 hours. That's not a casual walkthrough. That's a methodical, room-by-room documentation of everything present and everything missing. What they found confirmed their worst fears. There was blood inside the home, specifically on the front porch. DNA testing confirmed those bloodstains belonged to Nancy Guthrie. Sheriff Nanos was direct about what that meant. Evidence recovered from Guthrie's residence indicated that a crime had taken place within the house. That's why homicide investigators were called in alongside the kidnapping unit. The blood didn't necessarily mean she was dead, but it meant Whatever happened inside that house wasn't peaceful. There was no forced entry, no broken locks, no shattered windows. The absence of those things told investigators something specific. Either Nancy knew her abductor well enough to open the door herself, or whoever took her had access they shouldn't have had, whether a key, a code, or knowledge of her routine precise enough to exploit a gap in her security. DNA was also recovered from elsewhere on the property, separate from the blood on the porch. That DNA did not match Nancy Guthrie. It did not match anyone close to her. In other words, someone who had no business being on that property left biological evidence behind. Investigators sent those samples for analysis immediately. Her personal items told a secondary story. A woman who depended on daily medication for high blood pressure and heart issues had left without it. She has a pacemaker. Her phone was disconnected from her pacemaker monitoring app. Investigators noted she was a vulnerable adult who couldn't walk 50 yards on her own. Whatever happened, she didn't walk out willingly and independently into the Tucson night. The combination of those elements, the blood, the tampered camera, the foreign DNA, the absent medication, the pacemaker disconnect, the absence of forced entry, pushed this case from a missing person report into a federal investigation within the same day it was reported. The suspect caught on camera and the glove that could crack it open. 9 days after Nancy Guthrie disappeared, the FBI made a move that shifted the entire public conversation. On February 10th, FBI Director Kash Patel released surveillance images and video on social media showing a masked individual outside Nancy Guthrie's home in the early hours of February 1st. Dressed head to toe in dark clothing, gloves on both hands, a black backpack strapped across the back, and a gun holstered below the waist, visible in the footage. This wasn't speculation. This was a suspect. On camera. At the scene. Armed. The images came from doorbell camera data that had been successfully recovered even after the suspect tampered with the physical device. They had tried to block it and disable it. They didn't fully succeed. The FBI and Pima County Sheriff's Department went further. Using forensic height analysis equipment, a specialized chart set up at the property, investigators estimated the suspect's height from the surveillance footage. Their description? A male, approximately 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall, with an average build. The clothing became its own investigative thread. The ski mask, the dark pants, the specific backpack were identified as a 25-liter Ozark trail hiker model, sold exclusively at Walmart. Walmart subsequently provided law enforcement with records of all sales of that backpack, both in-store and online, across the region. Some of the other clothing items may have also come from Walmart, though investigators confirmed only the backpack as definitively traceable to the store. The holster was identified as a Strategy brand hip holster. Investigators were working to trace the point of purchase through retail records and online order histories. Then came the most critical break in the case. Investigators collected approximately 16 gloves in various areas near Nancy Guthrie's home while conducting searches of the surrounding neighborhood. Most of those gloves turned out to belong to volunteer searchers who had discarded them while working the area. But one glove was different, found in a field near the side of the road, approximately 2 miles from Nancy's home. This glove appeared to match the gloves worn by the suspect in the doorbell camera footage. The Pima County Sheriff's Department packaged it on February 12th and sent it overnight to a private forensic lab in Florida. The glove arrived on February 13th. Preliminary results came back to the FBI on February 14th, a Saturday. Those preliminary results confirmed the presence of a DNA profile on the glove belonging to an unknown male. Not Nancy Guthrie. not any family member, not any searcher. An unknown male whose DNA profile, as of February 17th, was awaiting quality control confirmation before being entered into CODIS, the FBI's National Combined DNA Index System, which holds over 19 million offender profiles and has assisted in over 758,000 investigations. There was also a separate development involving a gray Range Rover. On February 13th, FBI agents and Pima County Sheriff's deputies were photographed processing a late-model gray Range Rover in the parking lot of a Culver's restaurant in Tucson. The vehicle was part of the active investigation, and sources indicated that DNA evidence from that vehicle was also being analyzed. A retired FBI supervisory special agent and hostage negotiator who reviewed the case publicly said the glove gave him cautious hope. "This glove could be very promising," he said. "But we have to caveat that a little bit. Yes, it has male DNA apparently on it, but we don't know if it's the same DNA that's inside that house." He also noted that if the DNA was degraded, the lead could go cold. However, he confirmed that investigative genetic genealogy remained an option even in that scenario, meaning investigators could identify relatives of the suspect through publicly available DNA databases even without a direct CODIS match. The ransom notes, the fake kidnapper, and the chaos that followed. While investigators were processing the physical evidence inside the home, something unusual was happening outside of it. Ransom notes started arriving at news organizations. On February 1st and 2nd, at least 3 media outlets, including a CBS affiliate in Tucson and TMZ, received letters claiming to be from whoever had Nancy Guthrie. The notes were specific. They referenced details about her home. They described what she was wearing the night she disappeared. That level of specificity made investigators take them seriously, even as they publicly declined to confirm their legitimacy. The first note demanded payment in Bitcoin and included a specific cryptocurrency wallet address. It set 2 deadlines for payment. Both passed without resolution. Then a second wave of communications appeared, sent directly to TMZ founder Harvey Levin. Those messages claimed Nancy was alive, described her as scared, and said she was aware of the demands being made on her behalf. The sender stated it would be their only communication. A fourth ransom email later emerged, this time from a sender claiming to know the identity of the person behind the kidnapping. That email was turned over to the FBI for analysis. At 5 p.m. on February 5th, the deadline set in the first ransom note, Savannah Guthrie's brother posted a video on social media addressing whoever had their mother directly. The family had chosen not to make any payment without proof of life. Savannah herself posted a subsequent video with a more direct message. "We will pay," she said. But they needed confirmation Nancy was still alive first. Here's where the case became more complicated. A California man named Derek Kallela from Hawthorne was arrested on federal charges for sending a fraudulent ransom note to the Guthrie family. According to prosecutors, he sent text messages to Nancy's daughter Annie and her son-in-law Tommaso Cioni demanding Bitcoin, impersonating a kidnapper in the immediate aftermath of the family's first public video. He was charged with transmitting a ransom demand in interstate commerce and using a telecommunications device to harass. He was not the real kidnapper. He was an opportunist who saw a vulnerable family in crisis and tried to exploit their desperation. That arrest complicated the investigation in a specific way. Every subsequent communication had to be carefully separated from opportunistic fraud. It slowed the process of identifying whether any genuine contact from a real abductor existed at all. Meanwhile, a man was detained during a traffic stop near a fast food restaurant at First Avenue and River Road in Tucson on a Friday night, identified by Sheriff Nanos as a person of interest in the investigation. He was cooperative and was released after questioning. A separate search was also executed under a federal court-ordered warrant at another residential property in an affluent neighborhood less than 2 miles from Nancy's home. No arrests resulted from either action. Over 30,000 tips came into the tip line since the case began. Every one of them had to be evaluated. Every one of them represented a thread investigators had to pull before they could rule it out. 3 weeks later, and what still hasn't been answered. As of February 17th, Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 17 days. She is 84 years old. She is without her daily medication for high blood pressure and heart issues. She has a pacemaker, and her whereabouts remain completely unknown. The FBI increased its reward from $50,000 to $100,000 for information leading to her location or the arrest of anyone involved. The Pima County Sheriff's Department formally cleared all family members as suspects on February 16th, with Sheriff Nanos releasing a pointed statement. To be clear, the Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouses, has been cleared as possible suspects in this case. The family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious, and are victims in this case. To suggest their involvement is not only wrong, it is cruel. Federal investigators, local law enforcement, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Border Patrol search, trauma, and rescue teams, and canine units have all been deployed across the region. Investigators are reportedly using a technology called a signal sniffer, mounted on a helicopter, which can detect electronic emissions from pacemakers. If Nancy Guthrie is alive and within range, her pacemaker could be broadcasting a signal that pinpoints her location to within meters. An inside source told Arizona's family correspondent Brianna Whitney that there is a widespread belief among people close to the investigation that Nancy could still be alive. That same source revealed something significant about the investigators' working theory. Multiple experts who reviewed the doorbell camera footage with reporters said the incident did not appear to be a planned professional kidnapping. The source stated that investigators increasingly believe this may have been a burglary gone wrong, not a sophisticated ransom operation, not a targeted abduction orchestrated by people with criminal infrastructure. A burglary, one that escalated in a direction nobody, possibly including the suspect, anticipated. The Pima County Sheriff's Department pushed back against that characterization publicly, clarifying they had never officially said it was a burglary gone wrong. But they also did not rule it out. That ambiguity tells its own story. Retired FBI Special Agent Ray Johnson, who reviewed the case publicly, said something that captures exactly why this investigation remains so unusual. It does not feel to me what a garden-variety kidnapping for ransom would look like. In my experience, this feels more like a premeditated crime, either a burglary, a robbery, something different than a true kidnapping, because if you're planning a kidnapping, you're already going to have those ransom channels set up. That observation matters. The ransom notes arrived at media outlets, not to the family directly. The communications were fractured and inconsistent. The deadlines passed without consequence. A fake kidnapper emerged from California within hours of the family's first video. The suspect shown on camera moved deliberately, but also covered the doorbell camera with leaves, a method that a retired former police chief who reviewed the footage described as unsophisticated. The suspect in the footage didn't seem sophisticated enough, he said, noting the behavior suggested someone who believed they could pull off the crime because they thought they were without error, not because they actually had the experience to back it up. What the FBI found inside Nancy Guthrie's home, the blood confirmed as hers on the front porch, the foreign DNA recovered from the property, the tampered doorbell camera, the medication left behind, the pacemaker disconnect at 2:28 in the morning, told investigators this was targeted. Someone knew her routine. Someone knew her home. Someone knew the camera had no cloud backup. And someone was willing to take an 84-year-old woman from her house in the middle of the night. The glove is now the single most important piece of physical evidence in the case. 16 gloves were collected. 15 belonged to searchers. One matched the suspect. That one went to a private lab in Florida, produced a male DNA profile, and as of February 17th, was waiting for CODIS confirmation that could produce a name. A retired assistant FBI special agent in charge put it plainly. Best case scenario could be somebody that was arrested at some point in the past, and CODIS gets a hit. The Walmart backpack trace is running parallel. Records of every online and in-store purchase of that specific 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack are in investigators' hands. If the buyer used a card, a name exists somewhere in that data. If the purchase was cash, store surveillance footage from Walmart locations across Tucson and surrounding counties is being reviewed systematically, frame by frame, looking for a face that matches the build and height profile already established from the doorbell camera footage. Every transaction, digital or physical, leaves something behind. What makes this case unusual isn't just the evidence. It's the convergence of multiple independent threads, all pointing toward the same unknown individual. The blood, the glove, the backpack, the gray Range Rover, the foreign DNA on the property, the digital trace of a pacemaker going silent at 2:28 in the morning. Each of those threads is being pulled simultaneously. Any one of them, on its own, could break this investigation wide open. Somewhere in Tucson or beyond, a DNA profile is being cross-referenced against 19 million others in a federal database, and a purchase record for a Walmart backpack is being matched against thousands of transactions. Either thread, if it holds, could break this case open within hours of confirmation. Savannah Guthrie posted again on February 16th, looking directly into the camera and speaking to whoever has her mother. "It is never too late to do the right thing," she said. "You are not lost. You are not alone. And we are here." Whether that message reaches anyone who can act on it, that's the question that wakes her family up every morning. And until that answer comes, the investigation continues. Quietly, deliberately, and with the full weight of federal law enforcement behind every piece of evidence still being processed. What are your thoughts about these shocking details of Nancy Guthrie? Share with us in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. For more interesting stories like this, be sure to click on the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what you'll discover next.